It's a BumbleKast Mini, sponsored by Mobius.
I don't know if you know this, but the shonen community is known for posting and covering leaks of chapters before they're officially released. Let's say you wrote a Sonic and Dragon Ball crossover for the Jump brand magazine called V-Jump, and it gets leaked. Oh no! And it's being covered by popular YouTubers like Geekdom 101 and other manga review channels, and leaks are also known for getting scans and translated by dedicated translation groups. While leaks can bring hype to the chapters before release, as an example of this would be One Piece, but it could also cause backlash by the community. The Dragon Ball Super manga is known for this. Would you be upset by this or feel honored by this?
I'm not really part of that community, so I don't know if it's kind of like an accepted part of the process. Like if the leaks are kind of nudge wink leaks and it's just what you take into account. It's like, okay, we got the next chapter coming out. The pages will leak at this point. Be prepared for such and such and such. Or if it's a consistent problem that the industry is trying to deal with. If it's part of just what the industry does, if it's part of the greater community, if it's kind of become baked in, then I find it frustrating, but it is what it is. You roll with it. If it's a continued problem that hasn't been resolved, then I would be even more cantankerous. Because, previews are fine. You want to build the hype, but leaks, like purposefully spoiling material, undercutting whatever the marketing and publishing teams have in store, because they are trying to build hype. That's their job. And throwing off all their schedules and commitments is incredibly frustrating. I tend to steer clear of leaks myself, in part because I don't want to be spoiled. And the more I've gotten into various industries, out of respect of all the people who work so hard to build the ads and promotions and stuff. So if I did something as monumental as a Sonic and Dragon Ball crossover and that got spoiled before it was ready to be out there, I'd be kind of cranky.
Hey, Ian and Kyle, how would you feel if number one, Malicious Gravy MC was a Sonic song? From the Bleach movie. I don't know. Why not?
I mean, Sonic has an extremely wide range of song styles. I don't know if I see this one fitting in particular. But then again, if you told me that, there would be like screamo metal boss music in a Sonic game, I'd go, you're crazy. And Frontier says, no, that's how it works. It's like, yeah, it does. Okay. So I don't know, in the right context, yeah, it might work.
Maybe. How would you feel if Fearless Heart, the ending song from the game Willy Wombat, was a Sonic song?
Can we go back to number one, Malicious Gravy?
Malicious Gravy. I like gravy.
Again, I feel like it would be the context. Like I could almost hear it as like an ending theme. It might be a step up from Elise's thing because oof.
That was. It's very much like it's very much an ending theme. It's an end credit song. It's very much in the same vein as "I Am the Wind" from Castlevania Symphony of the Night, which is completely out of theme with the rest of the soundtrack, and it's kind of awesome. I actually kind of like it for that. I do enjoy that. Just because it's very goofy and it's a very like 80s ballad. It's just sort of song. So could it work as a Sonic song? I don't know. Maybe. How would I feel if it were a Sonic song? I don't know. I'd probably ironically enjoy it.
And you know what? If either one were to be, and they weren't my particular cup of tea, there is so much Sonic music out there to call from.
Pretty much.
It's okay. There's one or two that you don't particularly like.
Pretty much. There's a few I don't really care for too much already. And I love me some Sonic music. You guys know that. But, not all of it. If Starline were to create a Cell-like inspired imposter, what would he be like?
See, I actually have kind of some back pocket ideas along that line. Not so much, exactly like Cell, but something where the whole idea is a antagonist who grows more powerful. That is their personal quest, and the heroes failing to stop that Ascension. So I don't want to go into great detail because I might actually pitch that one day, whether or not it's actually, Starline involved, what with him being dead, or, how overt it would be as a cell nod. I don't know. But there's a couple ideas I'm kicking around, so they might actually be viable. But just so I'm not blowing off your question, part of the appeal of Cell's story is that he starts off as the underdog. Never mind the horror angle to it. Like, Bug Cell was not a match for anybody. Like, Yamcha probably could have taken him out. He was his menace was that he was a threat to normal people, but it was interesting because he was not a threat to the main characters. He had to be clever to get around them. He couldn't actually like fight them in the traditional Dragon Ball way. And he actually had an arc to him. He had a reason to fight and pursue certain characters because it was all in his personal journey. Kind of a good parallel recently is like Thanos in the MCU.
Okay.
Endgame is Thanos' movie. It's his story of his struggle to gather all the Infinity. It is a Cell story when you get down to it. It's him gathering the Infinity Stones to gather the power in the final form that he so desperately desires.
Yeah, and you mean Infinity War. Endgame is the hero's response.
Right. Yeah. I watched the two of them like back to back religiously, so they all run together.
Yeah.
Point is, he's still the bad guy, but he also faces adversity and personal challenges and suffers in his own journey to reach the end. I think that's what makes them both so compelling, and why when you actually get to the Cell games, it gets a little boring because he's reached his final form and it's just back to the fight. So if we were to do something like that, that's the arc to follow. That's the interesting thing. That's the compelling thing. It's the antagonist isn't an immediate threat necessarily. He has to grow into that role, and it's the hero's job to stop him from getting to that point. But you can't really help but root for the underdog, which makes for an interesting dichotomy of things.
It's kind of funny though, because Thanos was a threat to begin with. Like
he was, but he actually got hurt. He had to struggle. He had to sacrifice.
Yeah,
the sacrifices he made were horrible. And sure, he's sad, but it's because he's a monster.
Pretty much.
But it's still like, it wasn't just kind of compared to like Darth Vader for the original trilogy.
Yeah.
He didn't really have so much as an arc as it was he was the boogeyman.
Yep.
He was a force of nature until there was still some good in him after all.
All right.
But like Thanos had motivations. He had, I won't say misgivings because he was pretty committed to the cause, but he wasn't just one note overbearing. He could be frustrated. He could be surprised. He could be frustrated. He had a full character to him.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember some folks being disappointed with how he was in the sequel because he wasn't. He was very one note. He was just I am the inevitable badass. But that's because it wasn't his story. We had told Thanos' story.
Right.
It was done.
Yep.
This was the Avengers story to come back and beat up the bad guy. So they took the younger, less seasoned, less experienced, the Thanos before he went on his journey. And you don't care about him getting offed because you already know his story. And this version's even more of a jerk. So yeah, dust him.
Pretty much. How would Sonic and Friends handle The Thing from John Carpenter's The Thing in an isolated situation like the movie and a Metal Virus situation?
So I haven't seen The Thing. I know of it. I know the premise. I just don't know like the major plot beats. Suffice to say,
he's just kind of mimic, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, how smart was The Thing?
I don't know. It was from another world, so I don't know if its intelligence is quantifiable.
Ooh, nicely phrased. I mean, if they're stuck in there and everyone is so generally trusting of each other anyway, I imagine the creepy critter would have eaten them all by the end. I mean, your skill is only going to work so well until you let your guard down.
Mm-hmm.
And that thing's entire thing is letting your guard down.
The Thing is a bit like the X from Metroid Fusion.
Okay.
Yeah, very creepy sort of thing. Yeah. I think it would be. I don't know if they would stand much of a chance, honestly.
And once it got a hold of Sonic, that's all she wrote.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You.
Oof.
Now, if we were to do it in a more G-rated, maybe soft PG, Metal Virus-esque, where the thing is just like copying people instead of eating them or whatever it is it does.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a happy ending in there where, you could figure it out and contain it, but it would still be kind of dicey.
Yeah.
It would still get kind of bleak and harrowing.
I think it doesn't like fire, so Blaze would be the one who maybe puts it out, puts it down. Maybe she might be the only survivor. Yeah, there's really once you start getting taken over, apparently there's really nothing you can do about it either. It's rough. Here's a hard question for Ian: who's your favorite writer from the pre-Flynn era of Archie?
This is difficult and probably not in the ways that you think. And unfortunately, just a straight answer would be way too political. And I just do not want to deal with that fallout for the next rest of my life. So suffice to say, everyone who contributed to the book in the past brought something to the table that I enjoyed. Because I stuck with it from almost the beginning. And I was extremely happy to build upon that foundation that the others had built and mine from each of them to make all the contributions feel cohesive and part of one sonic world, rather than everybody's interpretations doing their own thing. So if they hadn't brought something to the table, I wouldn't have been with the book for as long as I was. So they all have done something memorable and worthwhile.
Yeah, but Mike Gallagher wrote Mecha Madness, so...
You got me there. I cannot refute that.
He also wrote some of the very early silly stuff, to be fair. But that is still kind of endearing and fun in its own way, too. So, but Mecha Madness...
He did write it, but if it had been drawn by anyone other than Patrick Spaziante, I don't think it would have had the impact that it did.
I mean, yeah, you're right. But still. Yeah. If Eggman pulled a killing joke on Cream and Vanilla, like shooting Vanilla in his stomach and stripping her and proceeds showing Cream pictures of her injured / grip, would that be the final straw for Sonic? Why did I have to read this?
It'd be the final straw for me. I'd walk away from the franchise.
I'm sorry. I can't read that.
I acknowledge that I am approaching the line of hypocrisy here because I have, touched the whole one bad day mentality that was brought up in that book. But that was the philosophical angle. The idea that one's virtue hinges on, just one moment where they can choose whether or not to break.
Yeah.
This is a very specific thing. And, no, I don't even want to acknowledge it.
No. I mean, there's a reason why I stopped reading it. It's like, Sonic and Goku have switch girls. Goku has Amy and Sonic has Chi-Chi. How would this go?
I imagine Amy would be a trifle impatient with Goku's temperament, shall we say. But he's a virtuous individual who helps others, and she's all about that, so they'd get along. Animal people have existed in the Dragon Ball world, even if that was retconned into like a fad. Like apparently it was just like you took a drug and you turned into a random furry, and people just did that for funsies, if I understand correctly. It was kind of a hand-wavy explanation of why they were so prevalent in Dragon Ball, but not so much in Z. Maybe that was only introduced in Kakarot, and it's not really considered canon. I don't know. But I don't really see any correlation there. Like, why would they be hanging out at all? Chi-Chi would be more concerned about getting home and taking care of everyone, and Sonic's like, all right, somebody in need, I'll help you out. Like, maybe his temperament would be something that she didn't particularly have patience for. She could see very many Goku-isms within him, but I think ultimately they could get along.
I mean,
sure. It also kind of depends on what era Goku, Amy, and Chi-Chi we're talking about here.
And even Sonic to a lesser degree, but still.
Yeah. Like, if we're talking early Dragon Ball Chi-Chi versus Tournament Chi-Chi versus Z Chi-Chi, that's like 3 different characters almost.
All right. What would Tails and Eggman think of Dr. Gero's creation, like the artificial humans and Cell? Or is it Gero or Jero?
It's Gero, apparently, but
Gero.
everyone knows it as Gero.
Gero.
Or Gero.
Okay. All right.
Apparently, unfortunately, because you know how all the Dragon Ball characters have some kind of like gimmick to the name
Sure.
stuff. Apparently, Gero and his entire family are based around words to revolve around vomiting.
Cool.
Like, why? Why do this?
I don't know. Everything's food related. Everybody's name is food related, and I mean that's a food related thing, sort of.
Fair enough. I cannot refute that.
And
okay.
and it's supposed if they're supposed to be villains, then I mean, what's an evil food thing?
Yeah. I mean, Vomi herself isn't particularly evil. She's just built that way. Anyway, that's not the question.
You know what I mean.
I know.
I mean, look, like the whole Frieza side is apparently named after appliances.
Yeah.
So where you keep your food or use your food.
Cold in general.
Yeah.
But Eggman would be intrigued, but it's not his particular cup of tea. He prefers clearly delineated robotics versus organics. Put your organics in the robotic to power it, but don't cross the wires, so to speak. Tails would be utterly horrified at the amoral application of such technology and just write it off entirely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you ever feel like people give Penders way too much credit than he did on Archie? Like, I told several people that Ken was not the only writer before you, like Carl Bowlers, Mike Gallagher, and others. And people making mistakes, like Comic Drake mistaken Issues 59 writer for Ken Penders, but it actually was Mike Gallagher. And people falsely accuse Ken for something he didn't write. Do you feel like this discredits the people who work on the book?
Oh, absolutely. I'm
pretty
a
annoying
big proponent of credit where it's due. I really get frustrated with it on my end. You know, people say, "Oh, that was such a great job." And it's like, "Thanks. That was written by Evan or Danny or Tracy or Aaliyah or somebody else."
Yes.
Now, I am not the end all be all when it comes to Sonic media. Even more recently, Tails Tube. I am not the writer for Tails Tube. I am part of the committee that puts that together. So, I'm glad people enjoy what I contribute to Sonic stuff, but I am not the guy. Neither was he the guy. There were lots of people involved.
I heard you were the guy, and I want to be the guy too.
Are you asking for a challenge?
You're just a kid. Maybe when you're older.
Hey there, co-host guy. What are you doing?
What? I forgot that's how he talked early on.
It lives rent-free in my mind.
Yes. Yes. You gotta have blue hair. What was the origin of Mobians in post-reboot Archie? Were they around since the beginning as humans or something else?
I figured they were, because post-reboot skewed much more heavily towards the game canon, and the game canon has not specified that. So they're just natural Earthlings like all the others, as far as I know.
Alrighty. And the last one. Thoughts on Ash winning the World Championships in Journeys and with him leaving the anime?
Good on him. Long time coming. Him leaving, I'll believe it when I see it.
He'll be back.
Like, the fixation on the status quo is strong in that franchise. So we'll see if he's not back within like a season or two. I don't mean that disparagingly. I hope whatever new vision they have and whatever the creators are trying to do with it are able to explore it. But from the bleachers that I watch the Pokemon fandom from, I kind of expect there will be some diehard saying, no, bring Ash back. We'll see.
I think most people are just amazed that the anime is still going. that there still is a Pokemon anime. I think that's really just about where people are like, what? I mean, I'm like, what?
It's really fascinating looking at the style as it changed from season to season, region to region, and the animation quality from like episode 1 to the most recent stuff. And, it's wild, man.
Yeah. Well, that's it. That's all we got.
Yep. Thank you to Mobius for sponsoring this episode. If you want a BumbleKast Mini of your own, head over to patreon.com/BumbleKast, Ko-fi.com/BumbleKast, or become a YouTube member.
We'll see you next time.